A blow to salaried class. 60% of employee contribution to EPF will be taxed on withdrawal. No change in income tax slabs. Sorry, middle class, but there's another hit. 0.5% cess on service tax, between 1 to 4% infrastructure cess, depending on which car you're buying. Air travel's going to get costlier. Excise duty on ATF up from 8% to 14%. The government will be spending 38,500 crore rupees on the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which is the second highest ever allocation for the Rural Employment Scheme, which, remember, was launched by the UPA. Presumptive tax expanded as per the recommendation of the Ishwar panel. The government also increases the time allowed for house construction to avail tax relief. These were some of the demands that CNNIBN had put forward in its Act the Tax campaign. A brand new health scheme rolled out by the government, specifically aimed at BPL families, providing 1 lakh rupee cover per family and an additional 30,000 those above the age of 60.
जो फिलॉसफी है वो ये है कि जो बहुत अमीर लोग हैं उनसे थोड़ा लेकर जो गरीब हैं उनको राहत पहुंचाई जाए.
What is the one big takeaway for the average citizen? It is that there is no big idea.
Is this a Robin Hood budget? Well, the proof of the budget will be in the implementation, says the opposition. The Congress alleges that the upcoming assembly elections in Punjab, Bengal and Tamil Nadu have forced the government into what they call a socialist mode. No budget boost for the Lal Street. Markets recover from their sharp decline, but remain weak. Sensex ends over 150 points down. Nifty falls below the psychologically important 7,000 mark.
Finance Minister Arun Jaitley presented the Narendra Modi government budget for 2016-17 this morning. And there was good news for India, good news. Early in the morning, PM Narendra Modi's travel agent confirmed that he would be present in the country and attending.
And while we discuss Modi Sarkar's budget, Cyrus Rocha gets you the budget that wasn't, as opposed to, of course, the budget that was, ahead of the show. And Prakash Javadekar and Abhishek Manu Singhvi will be joining us in about 15 to 20 minutes, so be sure to tune in to see that particular political face-off.
Right, so get set for an action-packed 2-hour 360-degree coverage here on CNN-IBN. Right at the top of this program, let's just take you through the key highlights. The key highlights for the salaried class, what we often describe to be the middle classes, the classes which voted heavily for Mr. Modi in 2014. This is what's happened. Budget 2016 has introduced a tax on employee provident fund withdrawals. It's a move which has created a lot of heartburn, I can tell you, across the country. Tax on EPF withdrawals to impact lakhs and lakhs of salaried workers, those who are involved in the service sector. 60% of employee contribution henceforth will be taxable upon withdrawal. Why would Modi Sarkar have done that? That's the whole question being raised. This tax will be applicable on the employee contributions from the 1st of April 2016, which means this year itself. So get ready for that. These are some of the other critical points which have come up from the budget today. 0.5% cess on service tax. That ensures that the next time when you go out to a restaurant or anywhere, you will continue to pay more. It was a tax which was levied last year, remains. Flying also becomes more expensive. What about cars? If you were thinking in terms of buying an SUV more than 10 lakhs, again you'll have to pay more. 1% infrastructure cess, petrol, diesel, CNG cars have also now been converted into expensive propositions. That's on the tax front. Let's run you through some of the other critical points which have been made in this budget in 2016 by the government. The second highest ever contribution to the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. It's a U-turn of sorts by Modi Sarkar again. 1 lakh health cover, that's being promised to families across the country. So obviously a strong focus on rural parts of India. Government to contribute to EPF for 3 years for new employees. The government's calculation is that it will ensure that those who are on contract wages ultimately end up being taken on permanent roles. No change in personal income tax slabs. There were some who were wondering whether there will be some kind of an increase there or not. That hasn't happened. For up to 5 lakh income, HRA limit up from 24,000 to 60,000 rupees. If you have a house on rent, you will benefit from this. Surcharge on income above 1 crore up from 12 to 15%. Mr. Richie Rich, Miss Richie Rich, you'll have to pay more. 10% dividend tax on incomes over 10 crores. Another new tax which has been imposed by the government. And this one is a very, very crucial information which has come out through the budget today. Black money, amnesty up to 45% tax. And that is applicable between June 1st and September 30th. If you have undisclosed source of wealth, pay 45% and clean your books. Access tax impact, we had taken a couple of suggestions to the finance minister. Presumptive tax has now been expanded. That was one of the suggestions which had been given by us. Only 25,000 rupees, 25,000 crores for recapitalization of banks. Here we're talking about lakhs of crores which are required by public sector banks. The government, it's a move, it's a first step, but it's identified 25,000 crore rupees in order to ensure that there is some kind of recapitalization which takes place of all those banks. But the million-dollar question is, why is the government trying to give benefits to the poor people, trying to work things out for rural parts of the country, but at the expense of the middle classes? Karma Paljor is there with me. Karma, what explains this decision of the government of ensuring that 60% of your income will be taxed from that EPF fund at the time when you withdraw it?
This is something that we work hard for throughout the life when we work as employees. This is the money we save. Certainly, a lot of viewers very angry. We've been getting angry calls saying, yes, middle class is being overtaxed and there's no relief for us. So this is the shocker. Now, also, to make a point, Budget 2006 has introduced tax on EPF withdrawals. Now, 60% of employee contribution will be taxed on withdrawal. Also, to all the people tuning in right now, also important to note that this is only applicable from April 1st, 2016, which means whatever you have saved before April 2016, it will not be taxed. Now, not applicable on accumulated contribution, which you've already done. So that's a clarification. Also, now, whether, the contribution from the employer will be taxed or not, that's one of the questions. We need clarification for that. And I've got our tax expert here from Deloitte, Divya Baweja, joining us. Divya, why do you think government has taken this decision?
See, actually, if you ask me, this decision comes as a big shocker for everyone, including me. You know, there was always a demand that the national pension scheme, which was given a lot of boost last year, should be made EEE to bring it in line with the PF regulation, which was under EEE regime. So what they have done is that when we went through the finance minister's speech also, he was looking at bringing about a parity in various pension schemes, be it superannuation, be it provident fund, or be it national pension scheme. So I think this is all been in terms of bringing parity. So because they have talked about a national pension scheme, 40% of contributions being exempt and balance being taxable, so to bring about parity, they have said that 40% of employees' contribution being made exempt and balance taxable. The only thing is that they have not touched the past contribution, which is a positive sign. This is also not a great positive sign because you saw from callers there was a lot of anxiety amongst them. So definitely by doing this, he has made this EET also and NPS also EET to an extent.
Right. So exempt, taxed. So this to distribute the savings that you do equally, if so, to EPF, to the national pension schemes as well, to bring some equity. So that is an attempt. Also, no clarification as far as this 40% tax exemption is concerned. Now, 40% tax exemption on your contribution is there, yes. But is this on contribution made by me as an employee? What happens to the contribution which is made by the employer? Now, the trouble is, if you tax the contribution made by an employer, then you run into something which is called double taxation.
Right. So when I look at the contribution made by the employer, there is some kind of a disconnect there also. So if I look at the memorandum or look at the notes, it talks about that any contribution by the employer over 1,50,000 will be taxable. But when I look at the provision, there is some disconnect in that. But you're right, to make it simple, there could be a double taxation. And in terms of this 40% contribution by the employee or 40% of total contribution, there is some disconnect between what is there in the memorandum or the rationale which was given and what is there in the provision which has come out.
Because this is the saving I make after paying tax. After paying tax, there is a certain contribution. There is an exemption under 80C, which I've availed of. Then again, I'm taxed. So that is double taxation that we are talking about.
Right. So when I take certain exemption away from 80C, and I don't know, I'll have to see whether how they are trying to balance the both. Otherwise, what will happen is that there will be some portion which will be exempt or some taxable. So to that extent, whatever is not exempt under 80C, I pay tax on that, and again it gets taxed here. So to that extent, there would be a double taxation on the over and above amount.
Okay, so we'll certainly be waiting for more clarification. This is a take by Neelab on budget 2016.
So what exactly are some of the critical takeaways for different sections of the society through this budget? What we've done here is that we've broken down the entire society into various subsets. Let me just take you through some of those subsets. First, for the poor people of the country. What exactly has the finance minister offered? 38,500 crores allocated under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme in this year. That implies that there has been a U-turn from this government starting from 2014. Remember those famous words of Prime Minister Modi? The only reason why he keep this scheme alive is so that the Congress party will keep regretting the very fact that they announced this decision. And look at what's happened today. The finance minister going to the extent of saying that this has been the largest allocation of money which has been done under this particular scheme. Let's tell you what's happening on the agriculture front. Again, this is a sector which many thought had been ignored by the NDA government. What's now 87,765 crores allocated for rural development. For the likes of Yogendra Yadav from Swaraj Abhiyan, even this is not enough. For the poor farmers across the country, again a section which was beginning to get this impression that this was a sarkar which wasn't really with the poor kisan, but was with the corporate sector. Highest ever compensation for crop loss under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. The soil insurance schemes. Lots of schemes there being announced by the government for this particular sector. Under the startup sector, lots of benefits there coming for the startups sector as well. Look at what the government has done. 100% exemption for startups for the first 3 years. This is of course subject to the kind of revenue that you have in this particular section. For working women, again something to look forward to. 500 crores for SCSTs and women entrepreneurs. This would imply in states which are going to polls now, the states like West Bengal or next year even Punjab, this will become an important, crucial talking point for the government. For senior citizens, again something that the government is trying to reach out to. 30,000 additional medical insurance cover for senior citizens. The only question there is just this, that while this will be welcomed, what about the decision of the government to tax 60% of your ultimate provident fund that you will get at the end of your professional career? That's something which I'm sure must be bothering senior citizens in the country. In the health sector, again something that the government has tried to rework. New health protection scheme for health cover up to 1 lakh per family, again in the rural areas, particularly those who are involved in the agriculture sector. This is something which will be looked at very, very closely. For housewives, again something that the government has tried to do. Remember, both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister talking about how those women who cook their meals through chulhas end up accumulating smoke, end up consuming smoke almost to the proportion of 400 cigarettes each day. 1,000 crores provided for LPG connection to rural women. Across this entire budget, what the Prime Minister has done, what the government has done is that it has tried to reach out to the section which it believes was beginning to feel that this was a government which was not with them. So that's the reason why I think many of these schemes that you're now seeing have been announced. Tax cuts, no change in personal income tax slabs. Now this is a big whammy for the middle classes, because while you saw so many schemes and so many benefits for the rural areas, for those who are involved, who live in gaons of the country, for those who live in cities, in tier 2, tier 3 cities, many thought that given the rise in inflation numbers, maybe the government should have done something as far as income tax numbers were concerned. Ultimately for the common man, well, it's an interesting definition to have. What is it that the common man is ultimately getting? The Aam Aadmi. Because this is a party, this is a government which believes that it is looking after the interests of the middle classes as well as the rural areas. Rebate for rent payers increased from 24,000 to 60,000. What that effectively implies is that if you live in a rented accommodation, you can now claim tax rebate up to 60,000 rupees, not just up to 24,000 rupees. If you feel like going out and if you feel like eating out with your friends and family members, I'm afraid the increase in service tax, which was announced last year, remains. So nothing much to celebrate there for those who were thinking in terms of having fun in their lives. Swachh Bharat campaign, some more money there. 9,000 crores allotted to the Swachh Bharat mission. The Prime Minister in 2014 from the ramparts of Red Fort had said by 2019 India was going to be a clean nation. Let me point out that despite this money which has been allocated in the rural parts of India, the target of achieving complete cleanliness, the target of building the number of toilets that the government had committed to, only 18% success rate has been achieved so far, even under this Swachh Bharat campaign. And finally, in the automobile sector, I was thinking in terms of buying a good SUV for myself, but now I'll have to think twice. If you were also thinking similarly, this is the reason why. Because the government has decided to ensure that luxury cars will end up becoming costlier due to the infrastructure cess which has been levied. Bottom line is this. This is an attempt which has been made by the government to indulge in some kind of a mid-term course correction. This budget in 2016 was presented literally as a symbol, as a signal of sorts that this is not a government which is a suit boot ki sarkar. This is the government which is of the Aam Aadmi ki sarkar. Have they really worked out enough commitments and promises for the Aam Aadmi? That's for you to watch out for.
CNN-IBN's big Axe the Tax impact. 2 of 5 recommendations accepted in Budget 2016. The deadline has been extended on house construction for a tax rebate. Some Ishwar panel recommendations are implemented. Both demands put forward by CNN-IBN in its Axe the Tax campaign. Your demands are recommendations accepted by the FM. Axe the Tax, a CNN-IBN campaign.
Okay, welcome back to our special coverage. Let's raise the defining question, frankly, of this entire budget. Is Budget 2016, which has been presented and tabled by the government today, is this ultimately, at the end of the day, a mid-term course correction which is being indulged in by Modi Sarkar? And joining me tonight to answer that question, 2 people on 2 sides of the political divide. Prakash Javadekar, Union Minister, representing the Congress Party, Dr Abhishek Manu Singhvi. And here in our studios, a very esteemed panel is with us. Patrick French, well-known historian and author. Our friend from formerly from First Post, a well-known author, and someone who's, I must point out, who's actually analyzed the maximum number of budgets in this country. R. Jagannathan, Vikram Mehta, another person who tracks the energy sector very closely, Dr. Arvind Virmani, former Chief Economic Advisor, and CM Vasudev, another well-known former senior bureaucrat. Welcome to all of you on the program. Mr. Javadekar, let me just first begin with you, sir. Respond to that question. From 2014 to 2015 end, till the Bihar election drubbing that you got, it was being suggested that yours was a government, sir, which was a suit boot ki sarkar. Your heart, your mind was only with one section of the population. Are you indulging in course correction through this budget, Mr. Javadekar?
No, actually, let us understand, budget is not a political exercise. Budget is an exercise based on the world economic scenario, your internal economic situation, the priorities for the period, and what is needed to be done. Every year you do it, and therefore you can't do all things in one go. So you do step by step. Earlier, important was to bring back investors' confidence. We brought it back. Now is the measures to be taken to revive the local demand and revival of rural sector, because, and to that end, we have not only adding rural employment money, but all out measures for rejuvenating the agriculture sector and also creating rural infrastructure. that includes rural job, water, roads and electricity, and that is empowerment of rural area, because ultimately India with 125 crore population, we are a big demand by ourselves.
I agree, sir.
But for that you need to...
It's taken you 3 budgets to realize that.
Money
it's taken you to lose Delhi. It's taken you to get reduced to 3 seats in Delhi Assembly elections. It's taken you to lose the state of Bihar. I mean, the story
Budget is not about...
No, sir. The story was very different between 2014 and, you know, as long as you were winning elections, you were known as the Ordnance Sarkar. You wanted to go into land acquisition laws. You went back on that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the land acquisition law is as good as dead, as far as this government is concerned, if this is the approach which the NDA government is taking, sir.
No, actually NDA government is the most flexible government, where we immediately said that if land acquisition law is becoming a central legislation, then let be it left to the states. Those states who want to have their laws amended, they can amend, and we will support. And that is why, because we know that competitive federalism will bring out many new reforms by states.
I wonder, you know, I mean, there are all these terms. There are all these terms that you're using, Mr. Minister, you know, cooperative federalism. It's almost as if that I'm witnessing a new avatar. I want to bring in Abhishek Manu Singhvi, but before that, I just want R. Jagannathan to come in and respond to that point being made there, sir, by Mr. Javadekar, that this budget, according to him, will go a long way in improving investor sentiment. Do you agree with that sense?
Well, I don't think it has done any damage to the investor sentiment, because I think...
But will it promote it?
Well, I think investor sentiment will take some time, because I think the guys who have to invest don't have the money, and the guys who are supposed to lend them the money don't have the money. So that's a different thing. I think, but the thing is, India is one-eyed in the land of the blind. There is global money waiting to be invested, and I think foreign investment will certainly come in. I don't see the domestic investment cycle reviving too soon. So I think that will happen. I think.
Dr. Singhvi, how do you respond? You know, a lot of people are giving me the figures under the MNREGA scheme, sir, where Mr. Jaitley very proudly said that this government has invested the maximum amount of money ever seen. Later on, it turned out that actually it was your government, it was the UPA government, sir, which had done that.
Can I just respond, please? I've been hearing you.
Yes, sir.
You know, the 2 things which came to my mind when I heard budget. One was the English saying, imitation is the best form of flattery. The second was, Der aaye durust aaye in Hindi. As you put it rightly, Bhupendra, it took them 2.5 to 3 years to realize that they had been abysmal failures. And this is an admission of guilt on the employment front, on the agriculture front, and also on certain related issues. Now, this is clearly